Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to today's episode of the Matthew Stone Street podcast. I'm talking in a calm voice because today's topic is going to be quite spooky. Well, we're here, ladies and gentlemen, on to record as Monday, and it's about 4:30, and the snow is coming down here in Kanawha County. What a day! What a day, and what a day to discuss things that I find quite interesting. I discussed on an earlier episode my passion for the macabre, so to speak. And today, with the snow coming down and the time of the year, we really want to get into this episode. But I will preference this. Two things. Number one, I'm going to try to keep this as... Move my 7-Up, they didn't sponsor me. I'm going to try to keep this episode as ungory as possible. I do also want to suggest or make the point that I do not, under any circumstance, endorse anything that is being talked about on today's episode of the Matthew Stone Street podcast. Let's get into the discussion. My passion for the studying of the macabre, serial killers, cult leaders, mass murderers, we're doing it today. Today we are discussing a serial killer. But let's define what serial killer is. I've got notes here to kind of keep me on point. I feel like sometimes my episodes get a little chaotic, so I want to make sure and try and have this conversation as orderly as possible. A serial killer is a person who murders more than 3 people. It was coined by FBI agent Robert Ressler. Some of these murders are characterized as anger, thrill-seeking, and attention-seeking. Psychopathy is a personality disorder or construct characterized by impaired empathy and antisocial behavior. Empathy. For those that don't understand, empathy is when you can relate to another person's emotions. A sociopath is someone or an individual who lacks empathy, has shallow emotions, and tries to manipulate everything and everyone around them. A person who participates in murder, why does society find this so interesting? And that's a good question. A good question because why do we find murder and the people that commit these horrible crimes so fascinating? It could be because it's hard for the human mind to wrap their head around the true capability of another human being. The violence and the deranged psychology that another human being can possess. These serial killers, a lot of them look like the people next door. They had families, they got married, had jobs, and we try to understand as a society, your Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, try to understand what would make an individual commit acts as heinous as what they've done. It leads to an old debate, nature versus nurture. Is this a nature versus nurture conversation? Was a person born to be a serial killer? Or due to the outside environment, the way individuals were raised, was that a reason why these folks committed such heinous acts? There's common traits. I attended a young woman who was a criminal psychologist, studied a lot of the popular serial killer traits and studied interviews, things that the general public has no access to. She found to be several common traits amongst those famous serial killers. One of those is they face some sort of trauma, and another could be those same individuals suffered a head injury of some kind. There may have been some others, but those were the two ones that I really took home from the conversation. A lot of folks that have become serial killers, they face trauma, they fixate on one individual, and in many cases they choose the folks that they murder because in their head they're murdering the same person over and over again. Today's topic, today's person that we're going to talk about was nicknamed the Damsel of Death, the Hooker from Hell, Aileen Wournos. Aileen was found guilty of 7 murders, was executed in Florida, I believe in 2003. Several documentaries have been made about Aileen Wournos, including My Interview with a Serial Killer, Aileen, The Selling of a Serial Killer, Mind of a Monster, the movie Monster starring Charlize Theron, and most recently on Netflix, The Queen of Serial Killers, Aileen Wournos. Aileen Wournos brings up the perfect example of nature versus nurture. Aileen, from almost the day she was born, was betrayed by everyone in her life at some point or another. Aileen was born and raised in Michigan. Her father went to jail for a heinous crime, and in prison, committed the ultimate act. Her mother abandoned her, took Aileen, her brother, and another sibling to the grandparents' house, dropped them off, and they didn't hear from the mother until adulthood. That being said, Aileen Wournos was raised by her grandfather and her grandmother. There are reports that her grandfather was an alcoholic and was very abusive towards not only grandma, but to the entire family. Mother, grandma, she was also an alcoholic and died when Aileen was still a young lady. Aileen never fit in with her peers. She was always a social outcast in school. Was pregnant at the age of 13. Soon after that pregnancy is when Grandma passed away. She had the child and was soon given up for adoption. No one ever knew what happened to that child. The one person that Aileen was very close to was her brother Keith. They had a very close relationship. There's speculation that their relationship was too close. Not going into details on that. But Keith was also afflicted with cancer and died at a young age, leaving Aileen alone. Soon after the child was born and given up for adoption, which for those listeners that may be on the younger side, this was in the 70s and 80s when this was teenage pregnancy and unwed mothers was looked down upon in society. After she had the child, was given up for adoption. After Grandma died, Grandpa kicked Aileen out of her house. She spent many days, living in the woods near her house. People would come over, abuse her, bully her, take things from her, whether it be cigarettes, whether it be alcohol. They would go back to their house and leave her to sleep in an old car out in the woods in the Michigan wintertime. Soon after being kicked out of her house, she chose a profession, the oldest profession in society. She was a lady of the night. And she eventually hitchhiked her way down to Florida. When she got to Florida, she met a gentleman, quickly got married. He was very rich. He was an older gentleman. She was in her early 20s, I believe. But she was very abusive. She liked to drink. She liked to smoke cigarettes. And she actually, one occasion, beat him with his own cane. Soon, the annulment happened, and she went back to her profession she had, being a lady of the night. She also was arrested a few different times under different aliases, whether it be for robbery, shoplifting. Eventually, she met a young lady, and she fell in love with that young lady. Her name was Tyria Moore. She being the situation that she was in, she decided that she was going to have total control over Tyria Moore, and she was going to do whatever she had to do to keep Tyria in her life. So she would work as a lady of the night in order to support her and Tyria's habit of going out in the woods, shooting guns, drinking beer, and smoking a lot of cigarettes. In the midst of this entire situation of her life, she ran into an individual that hired her for some services. She ended up killing him. She killed him. She stole his car, whatever money he had in his pocket, and there led to a murder spree. 7 men. Eventually, all of these murders took place on the interstate in Florida. A wrecked car was discovered with Aileen and Tyria Moore. The neighbors tried to help them out, but they ran off quickly to avoid any type of police involvement. Turns out that the car that was used was stolen, as well as the sketch. The neighbors provided the police enough picture in their mind of sketch, so they had a sketch of what the young ladies looked like. Tyria Moore, seeing that her sketch was on the news, that they were a person of interest in a stolen car, got scared, ran back home to her family, I believe in Ohio, contacted the police, and turned witness to save her own skin. Aileen Wournos was living in Florida without her girlfriend, the one person she thought that she could move heaven and earth for. She eventually got in contact with Tyria. Little did she know that Tyria Moore was working with the police and everything was being recorded, getting Aileen Wournos eventually to confess to the murders, where she was sentenced to execution, where again she was executed. This leads a great discussion to be had. While I don't endorse anything Aileen Wournos ever did, it's hard to not have empathy for someone who was always betrayed by the people in her life. From her parents, to her grandparents, to her so-called friends, to the people she was hired by, to the people that arrested her, to the one woman she fell in love with. From the day till the day she died, Aileen Wournos was betrayed, was used, because what later was found out, not only was Tyria Moore working with the police in order to get herself no prison time whatsoever, she turned state witness and was immune from any type of charges that could have been pressed against her. She was also working with the police to get a story sold to the media in order to make money. Also, what's crazy about this whole story is, in the middle of the trial, a young woman reached out to Aileen via letters and legally adopted her. A woman legally adopted Aileen Wournos while she was on trial, was given on camera by one of these documentary directors a large sum of money in order to provide interviews. Yet another person in Aileen Wournos' life that betrayed her. This is a good conversation of nature versus nurture. At what point do you want to consider Aileen was a bad person? She did some horrible things. She took the lives of 7 men. But at what point do you think, was that genetics? Her father went to prison. Or was the constant abuse, the constant betrayal, a factor in the events that transpired in the 90s? It's a great conversation. It's a great conversation because you don't know. You don't understand the trauma that this person went through. I can't go into too much detail because I'm not going to. But she went through a lot of trauma as a child, carried that trauma into adulthood, on top of trauma as an adult, which led to a need for control. And a lot of people that have experienced trauma, they try to control things as best as they can. This young lady found someone that she absolutely loved and tried to control every aspect of this woman's life. So at what point do you think it's nature versus nurture? They don't know. I'm talking about our scientists and doctors and all that good stuff. Psychopathy, sociopathy, these other disorders, they're there, but you never know what someone will actually do that will push them over the edge. This woman, and I'm not defending her, don't get it twisted. I'm not defending a single thing that Aileen Wournos did, but this person was betrayed from the top to the bottom. Her parents didn't want anything to do with her. Her grandparents didn't want anything to do with her. Her friends didn't want anything to do with her. Her brother died, the one person she was close to. Her girlfriend betrayed her. The cops even betrayed her. Because the cops were getting fired because they were caught making deals with the media in order to get the story published to make money off of this woman. Here's the thing about the whole situation. You take away the confession that she made at the urging of her girlfriend, Tyria Moore, they had no concrete evidence to tie these murders to Aileen Wournos. So they took the confession and ran with it. Let's talk about her lawyer. She hired a lawyer. She was a lady of the night. She didn't have a stable job. She never had a stable job, honestly. She hired a lawyer that tried to get a plea deal because by the time she was arrested and went through the process of realizing Tyria betrayed her, that was when she found out and the psychological break started to happen. She had a psychological breakdown and she decided that she was going to be accepting of the execution, and her lawyer did everything he could to make the process move faster, while simultaneously working with her adopted mother in order to get money for a story in the media. So the nature versus nurture debate is no better exemplified than with Aileen Wournos. This young woman killed 7 men. And for those that don't understand, because of the topic of murder, while people find fascinating, is not widely discussed. When a person decides to shoot another person, it's a very unemotional way to take another human being's life. It's not like strangulation where you see that person. It's not like stabbing where you're close to that individual. This is a quick boom boom, etc., etc. We'll talk about more serial killers on upcoming episodes. And with those, there's more nuance to why they did what they did. There's more nuance into for a lot of them, they enjoyed the act of murder, as sad as that is to say, and as much as I don't condone it whatsoever. In Aileen Wournos' case, she was more in a situation, she was in survival mode because she actually had feelings for this individual, and in order to keep her around, she had to do whatever she had to do to provide. So, at what point does nature versus nurture take over? At what point can you look at an individual and say, well, that person didn't have a good home life, blah, 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 as opposed to this person was born to do certain things? And when you hear about nature, you'll think of serial killers such as Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, even Ted Bundy. These individuals, for all intents and purposes, had relatively normal childhoods. They just enjoyed the horrendous acts that they participated in. Aileen Wournos, she was doomed from the day she was born. She had no other choice She had no education. She had nothing to call her own, and everyone around her, sooner or later, would betray her. I recommend anyone to watch the movie Monster. Charlize Theron did a great job. She did sympathize. She made you feel sympathy or empathy for Aileen Wournos. But to deep dive into this case and talk about the police corruption, the media corruption, the chronic abandonment that this young woman went through to the day that she died, I would recommend any of the documentaries that I listed previously. Really and truly, when the newest documentary came out in 2025, the Aileen Wournos Queen of Serial Killers, I believe is what it was, I was excited because Aileen Wournos is someone I like to study because it's a great nature versus nurture debate. However, it was sad to see all of the interview footage, all of the police footage of this young woman being betrayed. And while what she did was awful, and that's the bottom line, it's also just, to me, it's just as bad that you have to see the police and the media and all these people around her adopted mother, her lawyer, her friend. She had one friend that wrote letters to her. It's sad to see these people cash in on her. They cashed in on her without providing any type of true, genuine help for someone who experienced a tremendous amount of trauma, committed acts of violence, and then decided that she was going to allow the state of Florida to execute her without any type of fight, any type of support. Those people used her, let her get executed, which that's a whole debate whether or not she should have been executed. No therapy was provided, no type of psychological help was provided, and it's on YouTube. Her final interview, and you could tell that she was losing her mind. She was losing her mind trying to get away from the people, prison guards, warden, anyone that was trying to use her for financial gain. Aileen Wournos, the debate raged on for many years, nature versus nurture. We're going to come back with more episodes about serial killers. I really want to keep a blanket episode because I don't want to go into too much detail. I really enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please continue to watch and comment on the Matthew Stone Street podcast. This week, this is Monday, March the 16th. Happy 3/16, all my Stone Cold fans. But this week we have several interviews lined up. Had some new breaking news coming out of Charleston that we're going to discuss with one Michael Tawney. So please stay tuned, and until then, this is Stone Street out.